Good evening to everyone. We're just letting everyone in from the waiting room. We're going to give it a minute and we're just going to begin straight after that. So just hang on tight. Okay, I think we are at a satisfactory number of attendees. I want to greet everyone and say good evening to all the attendees and our presenter. Thank you for making time to attend the event. Before we get into everything, I want to give a quick run through of how the program will work. I also want to note that this event is also available live on Facebook. And yes, I will explain where that comes in later. So basically, I will start off with a quick intro of VIPA, explain quickly why we all here, introduce us to the HDA, and then we're going to jump into the presentation. After the presentation, we want to have a Q&A session. We ask that during the presentation and during the event that all the attendees have their mics and videos off so that the event can be clear and we don't have any hiccups. We ask that any questions that you guys have throughout the event to put them in the chat box on the Zoom chat box area. We also will be looking at the Facebook comments. So if you guys have questions on the Facebook viewing side, please attending to them. And in the Q&A session, we're going to try to go through all those questions. The HDA has asked us to try to be as thorough as possible. So that's refreshing to hear. So without further ado, I'm Luciba Mogo. I'm speaking on behalf of YIPA, the Youth and Property Association. And basically, in a short sentence, our focus is to transform the property industry, particularly by increasing the participation of the youth. And today we're going to be doing that through our education initiative, particularly by sharing industry information and industry project opportunities available. So also we will be highlighting the employment opportunities available in the industry. These opportunities are being introduced and created by the Housing Development Agency and will be presented to us by Amos Skhosana. I will now pass on to him and he will present for us what the HDA has. Thank you. Amos, you can take over now.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to put my camera on. Good evening and welcome to this webinar. And thank you so much to YIPA for the opportunity to come and address the entrepreneurs, the youth entrepreneurs in this unprecedented times of COVID-19. We had planned to have a normal function, a normal engagement, but given the current pandemic, so we then resorted into going online. Yeah, that's so. I'm going to introduce the Housing Development Agency and what work we do and who we are and what opportunities we do and how you can then partake in the value chain of our projects. My name, as being introduced, it's Amos Skhosana. I am responsible for a portfolio which is called Transformation and Empowerment in the agency, specifically focus on youth as well as people with disability. And then my other colleague, Makhabele, she is responsible for women enterprises as well as the military veterans. So those are the groups that we seek to empower and remove the barriers and afford them the opportunities, or lobby for them to access the opportunities in our sector. The HDA is an entity of the human settlements. We report directly to the minister through our board, through the board of the HDA, and it's governed by the CEO. The executive authority is the CEO, and then the senior managers that assist the CEO, and then it then cascades down in that organogram. But it's responsible solely to the Ministry of the Human Settlement. So I'm going to share my presentation with you and then take you through the presentation. The engagement is that I will take you through the whole presentation, and during the presentation, if there's any questions that may arise, please note them down, and then we'll attend to your questions at a later stage after my presentation. I think we'll proceed in that order. Is everyone able to see my screen?
Yes, Amos, we can see it very clearly.
Thank you. So the HDA is an entity of the human settlement and is a national public agency. We've got a national footprint. We've got 9 regional offices in each of the 9 provinces. So there's Gauteng, Mpumalanga, and KZN, Eastern Cape, Northwest Limpopo, KwaZulu-Natal, and Northern Cape, as well as the Free State. The agency was established in 2009 by the Act of Parliament, Act 23 of 2008, and it's accountable through its board to the Human Settlements Department, the Minister of Human Settlements. The agency was established to assist municipalities, provinces, and the National Department of Human Settlements in identifying, acquiring the land, hold the land, as well as develop the land, which is either privately owned or donated by government for human settlement purposes. Now, the mandate of the HDA since its inception was that the land should be suitable and sustainable for human settlements. We also project manage housing development projects that you see, historically known as the RDPs. They are now called the breaking new ground. So it's BNGs, and we administer and project manage infrastructure development, your bulk infrastructure in the human settlement, as well as the land acquisition in human settlements. We also do service stands in our settlements. We do informal settlements upgrade, which are your informal settlements, the establishment of townships, the formalization of those informal settlements, as well as your mining towns. So your old mining towns, once the mine leaves, there's people that were working in that mine, people that were staying in that mine. We formalize that township, and then we create a settlement around that specific township. That program is called the mining town program. And then there is a catalytic program that also look at the historical areas, the old areas. We call them, those are your catalytic mega projects that we roll out throughout the country. So we ensure and then we monitor and plan all this infrastructure that are required for housing development in human settlements. We monitor all those infrastructure, and then we assist provinces and municipalities in implementing those projects. How we are funded, maybe that is key. How we are funded. We get money directly from the national the National Department, Human Settlement, which it comes straight from the fiscus, and as well as money from provinces as well as municipalities. So a municipality would approach HDA and say, I've got a project that I am busy with in Everton, extension 52. I need a settlement. I need 5,000 units. BNG units, I need 5,000 service stands, I need 5,000 walk-ups in that unit, and then HDA will undertake that project, and then we then charge the municipality or the province a 5% management fee in rolling out that project, and that's how our funding is done. Our funding is in a form of an MTOP agreement, which is the agreement with the provinces, and then as well as the municipalities. And then another form of funding is what we call an implementation protocol. The implementation protocol is that we get money from a province for a specific project, and it's ring-fenced for that specific project rollout. The other source of funding is what we call a funding agreement. So in any other entity of government can come to us and say, I have a project that I need you to facilitate and develop, and give me the project at the end, so that I can then pass it on to my beneficiaries. So that's how, that's who we are, and that's what we do in the human settlements. We are a Schedule 3A, a state-owned enterprise, and that is governed, as alluded earlier, by the board. So there is that in that whole setup, the agency saw a need to develop or to establish a unit called Transformation and Empowerment. And our main objective in this unit is to remove the barriers, the historical barriers that have been there, where Black people could not access these opportunities, and where Black people are not participating in the construction value chain. So that's where we come in. Our primary objective is to lobby and is to advocate and to make these opportunities available. We've got designated groups that we work with, and these designated groups that we work with are part of the government designated groups. So we work with youth-owned enterprises. We work with women-owned enterprises. We work with military veteran-owned enterprises. And lastly, people living with disability-owned enterprises. And that is what we call designated groups in terms of the government designation. So in rolling out these infrastructure development programs and the housing programs in the HDA, there are set targets that we are responding to. And those targets are set by the human settlement in what we call a human settlement scorecard. A scorecard which I will show you later on in my presentation, how we are doing in terms of the scorecard that is set. It's an incremental scorecard. As you are aware, government works on a 5-year plan. So in the 5-year plan, there is a strategic objectives that we need to achieve in the 5 years, but building up to the 5 years, then we've broken down those targets on an annual basis. That forms part of our annual performance plan. So we then have to report to the National Department on those annual performance plan, how we are doing and how far we are in terms of supporting our unit. I'm going to speak specifically about our unit that seeks to support these designated groups in terms of availing the opportunities to them. There's business opportunities in the HDA, which I'm going to touch on later on, and there's career opportunities as well, mainly construction and support services like any other business, your finance and so on. So one of the things I want us to look at tonight is the presidential priorities in the 2021 State of the Nation address in February. And HDA finds itself in the first three of those. We are been given a huge task by the president, entrusted this to us as an entity, and we are busy rolling it out. And therefore that's why we've come to these platforms to lobby and for your assistance in achieving these presidential priorities. One of the priorities the president alluded or stated, it's a massive rollout of the infrastructure throughout the country, the employment stimulus to create jobs and support livelihoods. This is what we want to achieve in every project that we roll out in the HDA. It has to create employment. We've got to report on it, and we've got to report on how we support livelihoods. And the massive increase of the local production. We in our sector, the construction sector, the sector that we predominantly play in, is got very small margins when it comes to profit. Bulk of the money goes into material supply, because it's a very standardized and monitored sector by your CIBD and your NHBRC. So there are standards and norms of how your concrete slabs need to be, and how your wall needs to be. There is specification on how you build a house or how you build an infrastructure. Even that includes bulk services. There's very specific criteria that needs to be followed, and in order for engineers to sign off. So bulk of your funds and goes to that aspect of the business, which is material supply. And we've seen in the past that crucial part of building supply, material supply, is predominantly white-owned. And therefore we are pushing that, or we are lobbying that youth Black-owned enterprises in a form of a hardware, bricks, material, steel, and so on, need to find a space to play in this area, because that's where the money is. So I think I've spoken to this. The Transformation and Empowerment Unit is solely lobbying and advocating for participation of Black South Africans in the implementing of the housing programs, and then as well as the value chain of the HDA. How we do that, we've got projects that are set in a financial year, and I think this year, in this financial year, and our financial year runs from April to March. In this financial year, we are looking at projects that are just over 2 billion, 174 projects that need to be rolled out nationally. And so we then put measures in place to make sure that our Black SMMEs are benefiting. In your case, it's the youth that we want to take advantage and participate in this value chain and the rollout of these projects. So we earmark projects to advance the designated groups, which the earmarking is informed by the targets that have been set in the beginning of the year. As said earlier, there is a transformation scorecard, and the organization has set a target that that needs to be achieved within the financial year. So we then earmark a project to say this project is earmarked for youth, and this project is earmarked for women, this project is earmarked for people with disability, depending on when we look at our stats, how far we are in terms of achieving that. So HDA recognizes the critical role that in the housing development and land acquisition, the systems that millions of South Africans have got skills, and we need to empower them, as well as the job creation and wealth creation. We give you so what this means is that we will take a risk in affording the opportunities to upcoming SMMEs, which we call emerging SMMEs. And those emerging SMMEs, we've got programs that once you've been afforded an opportunity, we've got programs, there's sister entities in the human settlements, like your NHBRCs, which are responsible for quality and training, and as well as the NHFC that are responsible for funding and so on. So and social housing, which is SHRA. We will then we have a program where we look at how you are doing in terms of achieving your project's objectives, and then we then customize a program that assists you in managing the finances, managing the execution of your project, and so on. So those are the programs that holistically try to create wealth, as well as create jobs and empower our Black communities in the sector. I've spoken to this. So this is in terms of the designated groups, this is what our designated groups composition is. It's youth-owned enterprises between the age of 18 to 35, as defined in South Africa as being youth. Women-owned enterprises, people with disability, and military veterans. And all of these enterprises operating within the country should participate equitably. So now what we have done and on what we are doing, we understand in our sector, there is the category of a CIDB grading. And the CIBD grading then puts you in a certain category where your business can participate, the amount of projects or the value of the projects that you can get involved into, and so on. So what we are doing currently to mitigate and to assist our Black-owned enterprises is that HDA will be going out on tender in the next few days, and that tender will be calling upon all designated groupings to be part of a panel of contractors for 3 years. So we would have a panel of youth owned enterprises, a panel of women, panel of people with disability and military veterans. And then we categorize them according to those groupings, as well as we further look at where they are located in terms of their geographic area. So if you are in Gauteng, you will be in a panel of youth within Gauteng, and then the panel of youth in Gauteng, and your CIBD grade being level 2 or level 3 or 4, 5, right up to 9, and then you'll be put in that panel. So when opportunities come, or when we roll out our infrastructure projects, we will then send adverts, tenders to that specific panel that those projects are earmarked for at the time. In that case, you will then compete amongst your peers at the same level and in the same area. So why we're doing that is that we're trying to level the playing field so that you will not be competing with a grade 5 CIBD grade 5 SMME and being a grade 2. You know that for sure you are not going to get that tender when you compete with those. But if a tender is only advertised to only the CIDB grade 2s and 3s, then you stand a better chance because you're competing amongst your peers at the same level. And we promote economic growth in terms of our contractor. We want to see the growth in terms of your in terms of your CIBD grading. You would understand that in our sector, your growth is measured by the number of projects that you have implemented and so on. So your CIBD grade is measured, or your progression in the CIBD grade is measured by the number of projects you've executed. So once we then give you these opportunities, we will then be able to measure your progression, that you are empowered, indeed you are progressing from this level to the next level, so that you are able to then compete with your big construction companies at the end of your term with us. I'm going to just highlight basically what we've spent in the 2020-21 financial year. As I've alluded earlier, that our financial year runs from April, from 1st of April to the end of March. So you would see that the HDA in totality, in terms of their procurement and the in terms of the financial procurement aspect of things, we had procured this total amount. And then HDA has got a policy that we only do business with BBBE companies from level 1 to level 4. And we measure our performance in that. So our total budget, we spent 77% of our budget went to BE level 1 to level 4 owned companies. And then we look at the non-BEE companies that we spend our monies on. And these companies are predominantly other government entities, as well as the land acquisition. You would know that in the days that we're still living in, majority of the land is still white owned. So if we procure land from the fundonders, this will sit here, and which is part of our mandate. So this will sit here, that we've procured the land from the fundonders. Then in terms of the business aspect of things, we've actually done very bad in terms of the procurement or affording people with disability opportunities in the whole value chain. You would see it's sitting at 0.0. Our target is 5% every year of our procurement budget, and we've not been able to achieve that. In terms of the military veterans, we overachieved in the last financial year. That our target was 5%, but we managed to procure 13% of our budget went into military veterans owned enterprises. In the women aspect, our target was 35%. We've not been able to achieve that target. we only could achieve 15.9 of our total budget that went into women. And I think this is the interesting part, where that's why we are here tonight, is the youth aspect of things. HDA spent over 100 million supporting youth-owned businesses, and that amounted to only 11% of our target of 15%. So, and the reasons that these targets are so not achieved, or not achieved as we want them to be achieved, is the participation of youth enterprises in our sector. It is challenging for a young person, and I'm speaking to the converted that owns a company in the property sector today. And to penetrate the sector, it is a challenging. Hence, we have then adopted that we need to create panels and to level the playing field, and so that companies can compete at the same level, with the same experience, with the same CIBD grade, and being in the same at the same experience in terms of work experience. So that's what we're trying to do in order to push us to facilitate a more economic growth for youth. But also, having said that, it is also an issue of the number of barriers that we've come across that prohibit the participation of Black people, and some of those things we are addressing. And on top of my head is the funding. So if you had started a company 2 years ago, and then we were hit by COVID, there was no financials. So if you then if you get an opportunity, being either subcontracting or being a main contractor, and then you're appointed. But if you then go to a bank, a financial institution, and say to them, I've got this project, I need funding. And they will say, bring us your financials, let's see if the company is stable. And those are the things that are a hindrance for youth participation in our sector. And what we've done as the HDA, we've appointed a service provider that has been given a mandate to go to all the banks, all the financial services that offer financial assistance for youth, to go and negotiate agreements and flexible criterias and flexible criterias and agreements, as well as facilities, credit facilities that are biased to emerging contractors and Black people. So we are busy with that, and once that is in place, when you get to be part of our panel and you are afforded an opportunity to build, let's say for argument's sake, 20 BNGs or 100 BNGs at a subsidy quantum of about 120,000, we will then channel you to those financiers to say, we've got an agreement with this financier, go to them, you will be able to get your capital funding and so on. So primarily, these are the skills in terms of job creation, as well as entrepreneurs. We're looking at civil and structural engineering because we are in the construction space, in the building space. We're looking at quantity surveyors and architects, although we do have architects and quantity surveyors and structural engineers within the HDA, but you would understand that if we have 174 projects running concurrently in the same year, we do from time to time go out and look for services of what we call professional teams. Your professional teams will then will be a composition of your civil and structural quantity and architect, sometimes town planning and construction management. So your companies can then participate in being part of our panel. And once you are part of our panel, when we need your assistance as a principal agent on site, a specific site that is allocated, these are the services that we would require from yourselves, as well as project management, managing. In the support aspect of our business, we do a lot of conveyancing and land acquisition. You'll remember that our mandate, our primary mandate, is acquiring a suitable and a sustainable land for human settlement. So we do a lot of conveyancing. We do a lot of land acquisition through conveyancing and facilitating those deals. Those deals for the human settlements and other entities of government that can come to us and say, can you purchase this land for me? Can you find the land for me? So there's the legal, the corporate aspect of legal in terms of your agreements. As alluded earlier, we enter into agreements with municipalities and provinces and other state organs. So those agreements are drafted by ourselves internally. So there's an opportunity there. There is also an opportunity in terms of the support, which is the support side of our business, which is the HR, the human resources aspect of it, our finance departments. Our agency is audited by AG, Auditor General. However, because of the capacity at AG, we have been given a sign-off that we can procure external auditors that will report directly to AG. So there's external audit opportunities within the organization. There's forensic audit opportunities available. There is supply chain management in terms of career at the HDA, IT, research. We've got a research unit that looks at alternative build technology that is coming, the global warming. What can we do in terms of green building? All of that sits at research, at the research team. And then the strategy on organizational performance. That is the wing of the business that looks at our strategy, whether are we aligning ourselves to achieving our mandate? If not, what can be done for how to turn around the strategy in order to speak to the objectives of the agency. And I think that's about it, about the Housing Development Agency and the opportunities that we have. I would have loved to share with you some of the projects that we have, but I would say we've got projects in all 9 provinces. There is projects in the Eastern Cape, the Duncan Village. There is projects in Gauteng, the Mamelodi hostels. There's a project in Alexander in Gauteng, where we are we're developing a women hostel at Helen Joseph Extension 52. There is number of projects in KZN. There is number of projects in Polokwane and Limpopo, and so on. So our as I said earlier, we've got 174 projects in our books this financial year that needs to be implemented. Thank you very much for listening to me, and I will through you, Chair, Program Director, will then go through to the questions and answer session. Thank you.
Thank you, Amos. That was very informative. And I'm joining you from East London in the Eastern Cape. So it's nice to know that we haven't been forgotten, and you guys are working in our areas. That's lovely to hear. So without further ado, just jump straight into the questions. There are a bit of a range, but I think the most practical place to start is to ask about what kind of company do you have to be to participate in these opportunities? Namely, does your company have to be registered? I assume with the CIPC at the very least. Does it have to be
Yes,
registered? Yes.
yes,
And also, yes.
that is the first start. CIPC, your company needs to be registered. I think now you can only register as a PTY Ltd, no longer a CC, but we still have CC companies in our books that are old companies. And then the second layer of it, you have to, because we are predominantly in the construction space, if you want to participate in the project in the construction, then you've got to register with the CIDB, and then also register with the NHBRC, and those are the mandatory requirements for doing business in the construction side of
Um,
things.
Now that you touch on your guys' predominant focus on construction, are there opportunities for consulting engineering work or companies, I should say? I know you touched on it a little bit in your presentation.
Yes, we do from time to time, as I indicated earlier, the projects become a massive projects. And from time to time, we might need the services of a engineering company to assist us with the feasibility studies of a project that we want to undertake. Being in a mining town, being in informal settlements. So yeah, we do. And or not only engineering services, but as far as sometimes legal opinions on matters, on disputes. So it varies in all types of our the services that we offer. But predominantly it will be engineering services, it will be construction, and then as well as town planning for township establishments.
Fantastic, fantastic. Now that we know what kind of companies you guys take on, how do I get taken on? Is there a database you guys have that I must register on? Yeah, how do I be considered to be for the earmarked projects? And particularly that panel that you spoke about, how do you get an opportunity to join that?
Yes, I am pleased to say that we will be going out on tender in the next few days, to in inviting all the SMMEs specifically that fall under these designated groups. That panel will be on our books for 3 years. So that means we'll do business with you for the next 3 years. So that it will be advertised through a government gazette, as well as all national newspapers and our website as well. Once those terms of reference go out, it will be advertised. So the composition of that panel would be a company with a CIBD grade level 1 right up to level 9. So your level 1 is someone that just registered a CIDB with no projects or 0 projects to maybe less than 100,000 of a project that you've done, to a grade 9 of over 40 million. You've handled a project that is over 40 million.
I
Thank you.
understand. I understand. And then now, speaking about the CIDB gradings, will you guys also be open to taking on joint ventures with smaller CIDB graded companies joining forces with bigger graded companies, as so forth? Is that something you guys are open to and considering?
Yes, definitely. When you do a joint venture, once you submit a tender for and it's a joint venture tender, you would know that you would then have to have a joint venture agreement that you need to submit to say, I'm joining venture with, I see, I'm going to use the names I see on the screen, with Xoliso and Thandolwethu, and then in order to participate in this tender. And then once you've done the joint venture, you then submit that agreement, the joint venture agreement, and your separate companies, your two separate companies profiles into this tender. And then you do what we called a JV, triple BE certificate, as well as a JV CIDB certificate, which is going to take your grade and take this grade, and then they combine it, and then they issue one certificate for specifically for that joint venture opportunity you're applying for. So joint ventures are welcome.
Fantastic. That's great to hear. Especially, I assume that helps out with the small companies starting up.
Yes, definitely.
Fantastic. With speaking scope in terms of across the country, there's a question that asks: it's trying to ask, is it possible to, I guess, access different projects in different provinces if you're active, if your company is active in more than one province?
Yes, look, remember this is a competitive bidding. Being a part of the panel does not exempt you from competitive bidding. So if you've got a national footprint, you have an advantage that you are able to compete at Limpopo, but at the same time able to compete at the Eastern Cape, and depending on your experience. So your proposal will go through the normal SDA, the normal procurement process.
Okay. Fantastic. I think there's a question that's just come onto the chat that I think fitted well with this, that asks generally what level of experience would be required to be considered for these projects. Other questions are also asking along the lines: how do you assist those that have no experience to getting these tenders? And also something more particular or specific, I should say, what if you're a subby and you have all your documents in order? How do you go and register for these tenders?
You would know that government has got through the Triple PFA Act of 2017 that all tenders that are above 30 million, 30% of that should be subcontracted. And the act is very specific which group is the subcontracting falls to. So it would be your Black owned, 51% Black owned women, 51% Black owned youth, 51% Black owned cooperatives, 51% Black owned military veterans and people with disability. Now, what we then do at HDA, if you are grade 1, let's say you are grade 1 CIBD, you just registered your company last year, you don't have a project, but you've got the experience, you've worked somewhere in the construction sector, and you want to grow your business. We will then say we appoint Marine Roberts. You appoint Marine Roberts to build 2,000 units in Tanzania, for example. We then say to Marine Roberts, in terms of the Triple PFA Act, you have to subcontract 30% of this contract, the value of the contract, to emerging Black-owned enterprises. Now, this is the list. We will then give Marine Roberts the list of the subcontractors in that region, in the Eastern Cape. There's CIBD grade 1 or 2, 3, 4. We give it to Marine Roberts and say, you select anybody from this list that you want to work with. You interview them. Some of them do not have the skill, but the objective here is to transfer the skills and advance them. and in that way, it's part of, it's one of the mitigating factors that we've put in place as HDA, because in the past we would have appointed a contractor and say, you can go and find anyone that you can subcontract, and we found that in that way, people would front, they would bring in their own friend and say, this is the subcontractor, and at the end of the day, the person is not empowered. By taking that, having that subcontractor in our panel, it helps us to monitor that this person is truly empowered, and then we can also have access to this person to say, were you really empowered by this project as you were appointed? Thank you.
No, that's clear. I understand. I hear what you're saying. Then there's a question also that asks, or a few that actually are trying to allude to, do you guys offer any assistance in preparing to tender?
We do have social partnership, strategic partnerships agreements with various stakeholders. For an example, we have an agreement with South African Women in Construction, with SAWIC, and then we're busy with an agreement, finalizing an agreement with BBC BE Youth. So what we then do, we then have workshops with those groups. Like yourselves, YIPA, you can approach us and say, our members are struggling with compiling a tender document. Take us through. So that workshop will be specific for that specific need that has been raised at the time.
Yes, I hear you. That's great to hear that you guys will go out your way to do that. Now there's a specific question about a particular document that needs to be included. I don't know if you are familiar with SBD 6.2, local content. Yes, I've got an attendee here who's very frustrated with how it's always is compulsory for it to be included, and he feels, or she feels, it might be making a mistake on that document. Do you guys have any hints or have any information out there to help people fill in those forms correctly?
Yes, reluctantly, yes. I would say reluctantly, yes. But that document is a National Treasury document. And I would channel, or I would ask the attendee to get in contact with National Treasury. And I think they're the best people to assist you in terms of what to fill and how to complete that document.
Great. Also, there's just a question that popped up that asked about joint ventures, which is actually quite crucial, I feel. It asks, does the company you are joining in this venture also have to be a youth-owned company?
No. Joint ventures can be any other companies. It doesn't have to be only youth. It's not limited only to youth. And joint ventures are used to score higher BE points, if I could say that. So you would find a white-owned company would come to your company and say, can I joint venture with you in this tender? So that we can combine our years of experience, combine our triple BE status to advance further. So no, you can do a joint venture with any other company.
And then also in terms of that proposed panel, I've got an attendee who's asking, will that proposed panel now supersede the current panel with reference to, I think, HDA announcement in Joburg in 2020? Do you know anything about that?
Yes, no. That is the new panel that was we went on tender in 2020, but that panel is level 6 to level 9
Okay.
of CIBD grading. So this panel will consist of designated groups, and you would understand that level 6 to level 9 of CIDB grade did not take into consideration the designation or the designated groups. So you would have white-owned companies in that panel. This specific one that is going to go out is specifically for Black people, the designated groups, from CIBD level 1 to level 9. Yes, you might be part of the, you might be Black and be part of the previous panel that is the current panel. What we'll then do when you apply for this panel, there was a letter that was sent out to the company when they made it into the panel. So in your submission, you will then submit that letter. The terms of reference will spell it out. You will submit that letter, that appointment letter, that I am currently in your panel, that was advertised last year, and I also belong to this designated group, and then you will be automatically put into that designated groups according to your designation. Thank you.
No, fair enough. Then in terms of your, I guess, pre-announcement that you guys will be tendering out soon, one of the attendees asks, what happens, because of these times we're in, loss of incomes, it's been tough to upkeep company documents, and subsequently the CIDB or NHBRC registrations have expired. Do you guys need all that to be in good standing for you to consider applications when these tenders do get put out, or is there a process that you guys are willing to undergo with the applicant?
Yes, unfortunately, because of the environment we work in, so there's stringent measures in terms of safety. So all your certificates with the CIBD, CIDB, as well as NHBRC must be valid.
Okay, no, I mean, I understand it's a strict industry. I want to ask, before I switch to the employment side, all landscaping subcontractors, is that a avenue that you guys do go down under, or opportunities you do give out?
Not at this stage. Remember that our projects are primarily residential housing. Yeah, so we don't do landscaping.
Okay, no, unfortunately. Then there was also a question interested in how, or what is the state of your guys' 174 projects? Can you shed light on that?
Some of the projects are ready for implementation. Some of the projects are still in the early stages. Some of the terms of reference will still have to go out to the panel. Yeah, so it varies. Some of the projects are already being implemented, and some of the projects are projects that were carried over from the last financial year to this financial year.
Okay, fantastic. It's great to hear that there's stuff being done and still more to come. That's great to hear. And then on the employment side, or the career opportunities, where can the attendees, or guys looking for these opportunities, find this information on the vacancies at the HDA?
In terms of the employment side?
Yes.
Our vacancies are advertised in the national newspaper, the Sunday Times, Sunday World, but also our website, which is www.thehda.co.za. And then you click under vacancies, the current vacancies, and then you would find the details there.
Fantastic.
And then in terms of the internship programs, I stand for correction, but I think we've just concluded our internship programs for the next intake, which is 50 graduates that will be taken starting from the 1st of August for 12 months. So the internship program runs for 12 months. And that program is a nationwide program. Thank you.
Great. And then I would also assume the locations of your various offices across the 9 provinces would also find on that same website.
Yes, the contact details thereof, as well as the address of the 9 regional offices is available on our website.
No problem. And then I think to start rounding off our event, I just want to go through some of these questions. Some of them were covered in the presentation. I wanted to ask, would you be able to make the presentation available to YIPA so that we can email to any members who are interested in the actual PowerPoint?
Yes, I'll do that.
I will also say that if there's anyone who has joined us late and wants to watch the whole event from start, it will be available on YIPA's Facebook page. So that is also an option for you. And I'm just now, there's the last few questions coming in here. I think an interesting question I should ask is, do you, as the HDA or in your projects, I should say, have any space for fiber construction or installation companies or suppliers, I should say? And is that something you guys are considering to specifically give to the youth by any chance?
I think that would fall under the Ministry of Telecommunication, communications, and that wouldn't be in our space, no.
Okay. Thank you then. I think I'm willing to call it for time's sakes. I don't see any other questions here. Just one last read through. Yeah, no, I'm happy. I hope the attendees are also satisfied. I want to say from YIPA, thank you, Amos, and thank you to the HDA for coming to and sharing this information with our members. It was my honor.
Well, thank you very much. My pleasure. Thank you very much.
Good night to everyone. I hope you enjoyed it.